A wedding night filled with music, laughter, and celebration. Hundreds of women and children gathered inside a brightly lit tent, dressed for joy, completely unaware that within minutes, that same tent would become a burning coffin. Screams would replace songs. Mothers would search for their children through walls of fire. Families would watch helplessly as loved ones disappeared into flames, never to return. And when the smoke finally cleared, Kuwait was left asking one terrifying question. How could the wedding turn into one of the deadliest mass tragedies in the country's history? But what makes this story even more disturbing is that this wasn't an accident. This fire didn't start because of faulty wiring. It didn't begin because of a random spark. According to investigators, someone brought the fire there. Someone with rage. Someone who wanted revenge. But here is a question that still divides people to this day. Was this a calculated act of murder? Or was it a reckless moment of anger that spiraled into unimaginable horror? Because what happened that night in Al-Jahra was more than a crime. It was a nightmare that swallowed entire families in minutes. A tragedy so horrifying, survivors still relive it in their sleep. Tonight, we go back to Kuwait, August 15th, 2009. A wedding celebration, a tent full of laughter, and a fire that turned the joy into mass death. This is Al-Jahra Wedding Fire. The groom was a man named Zayed, who was entering his second marriage. His first wife, Nasra, strongly opposed the union. The couple had 2 children together, a daughter and a son, and had been married for years. Their early relationship had its challenges, largely due to a significant age difference, but nothing that seemed insurmountable at first. Over time, Zayed's behavior changed. He became increasingly distant, absorbed in work, and emotionally unavailable. Financial provision continued, but the emotional connection and the daily family life eroded. Nasra tried repeatedly to communicate her pain and needs of their children, but her efforts went unanswered. When she temporarily moved back to her family's house with the children, hoping it would promote change, Zayed showed little concern. Tensions escalated when Zayed announced his intention to marry again. Nasra pleaded with him, even offering to remain as his wife under any conditions if he cancelled the new marriage. According to the accounts, he had already divorced her and moved forward. Family pressure on Zayed further encouraged the second marriage, framing it as a fresh start with a younger bride from a respectable background. The wedding date was set for August 15th. A large celebration was planned near the new couple's home, following local traditions with a separate tents, one for men and much larger one exclusively for women and children. The women's tent was massive, capable of holding 250 to 300 guests. It was fully equipped with air conditioning, seating, and festive lighting. That evening, the atmosphere was joyful. Women, children, and elderly guests, including visitors from Saudi Arabia, filled the space. Laughter, greetings, and celebrations filled the air. At approximately 8:15 p.m., everything changed in an instant. Emergency services began receiving frantic calls. A wedding tent is on fire. Hundreds of women and children are trapped inside. The calls multiplied rapidly, filled with screams and panic. Firefighters, police, and ambulances rushed to the scene, but nothing could have prepared them for the sight that awaited. The tent had erupted into a raging inferno. Thick flames and black smoke consumed the structure. Many women dressed in traditional attire panicked at the sight of men outside and initially retreated back into the burning tent. The single main entrance and the tent's design, closed on 3 sides, turned what should have been a place of celebration into a deadly trap. Chaos reigned. Children cried for their mothers. Men tore at the tent fabric and used whatever they could find, clothing, blankets, to help pull survivors out. Rescuers and volunteers worked desperately amid the heat and smoke. The scene resembled the aftermath of major disaster. Bodies lying on the ground, some built together, others carried out still alive, but suffering horrific burns. One particularly devastating image reported was a mother clutching her child in her arms, trying to shield the little one from the flames. The tent support poles eventually collapsed, bringing the heavy structure crashing down and trapping many beneath it. Among the victims was a family whose story was shared with me directly. A mother attended the wedding with her 3 daughters and other relatives. 2 of the daughters and 18 years old, and their 16 years old cousin stayed inside the groom's house to fix their makeup instead of entering the tent immediately. They heard a loud explosion-like sound followed by screams. Rushing out, they witnessed the horror. The mother and the 23 years old sister, who had a young son named Nasser, searched for the youngest daughter, 8 years old, Budur, who was still inside the tent. In desperation, the mother ran back into the flame to save her daughter. The 23 years old sister handed her son to a bystander and followed her mother. The tent collapsed before they could escape. The 18 years old sister watched helplessly as the structure fell on her loved ones. Woman physically restrained her from rushing in after them. Later at the hospital, the family learned Budur had been transferred in critical condition but didn't survive. The mother and the old sister suffered severe burns. The mother passed away after weeks of agony. The 23 years old sister briefly regained consciousness, uttering only her son's name before she too did. The cousin and her daughter were found fused together from the intense heat and were buried in the same grave. Stories like this multiplied across Al-Jahra and Kuwait that night. One man reportedly lost 7 family members. Dozens of funerals were held, some with multiple victims from the same family. In total, 44 people died in the immediate aftermath, with the final toll reaching around 66. More than 60 others were injured, many with life-altering burns. Some survivors were transferred to specialized facilities in Riyadh and treated by international medical teams. Investigators quickly determined the fire wasn't accidental. Forensic evidence revealed containers with traces of gasoline near the scene. Witness statements pointed toward Nasra. A maid reported seeing a woman carrying a gasoline container and lighter. A taxi driver stated he had driven Nasra to a gas station to purchase fuel before dropping her near the wedding tent. During interrogation, Nasra confessed she admitted planning to disturb the wedding out of the deep resentment and jealousy. According to her account, she intended only to scare the guests and ruin the celebration by spreading gasoline so the smell would force people to leave. When that didn't happen immediately, she lit the fire, believing everyone would escape quickly. She maintained she never intended this. Nevertheless, the consequences were catastrophic. Nasra was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. On January 25, 2017, she was executed along with other prisoners. Reports from her final moment describe her expressing remorse and repeatedly asking for forgiveness. The Al-Jahra Wedding Fire remains one of the darkest chapters in Kuwait's recent history. This wasn't just a fire, it was a profound tragedy that forced the society to confront grief, justice, forgiveness, and the fragility of life. Let me know your thoughts below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe.